Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 28th of October and we are going to deal with three very important topics which are in news. The first topic is how Olympic cities are selected. Now, there was an article in the Hindu with respect to this. Why? Because our Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi has thrown the hat in the ring and offered the international Olympic body that India wants to host the 2036 Olympic Games. And as aspirants, we should understand the mechanism behind selecting the venues for these Olympic Games to be conducted. What was the mechanism earlier? What is the mechanism now? There have been certain changes in the mechanism. So we need to understand and study that. The second topic is basically a continuation from yesterday, where we studied about those 8 Indian ex-naval officers, the veterans who have been awarded the death sentence by Qatari court. We did not cover the India-Qatar relations over there. How are the India-Qatar relations? So in this particular topic, we will be covering India-Qatar relations. What have been the basic tenets of relations? What have been the challenges in the relations? And the third topic is protecting the Arctic. So there was an editorial in the Indian Express in which the authors highlighted the role of India in the Arctic region. Actually, in the Arctic region, there is one body called as the Arctic Council. Russia and many European countries are there. USA is also part of it. Now, since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, that Arctic Council has been suspended. And that uninhabited, or I would say uncharted territory, unclaimed territory, which is a very vital, I would say, component, or very vital, I would say, region, particularly with respect to climate change, because Arctic ice is melting at the fastest rate in history nowadays. How to conserve it? And Arctic Council, which is suspended right now, had this responsibility of conserving the Arctic. Now the authors in this editorial, they say that India can play a very vital role in conserving the Arctic. Why? Because India has this diplomatic capability of achieving consensus in a divided world. The Arctic Council per se is also divided. On one side we have Russia, on the other side we have USA and the European countries. There, bringing them on one plane, India can do this. India is not one among the 8 permanent members, but yes, India is one among the 13 observer state members in the Arctic Council. This is, I would say, a big, responsibility given to India by those authors of that particular article. So here in this, we will study about the importance or significance of the Arctic region. We'll also study about the Arctic Council and all. So let's get started. Now, how Olympic cities are selected. This was in news because a proposal from the Indian Prime Minister to International Olympic Committee that India wants to conduct the Summer Olympics or the Olympic Games of 2036. Apart from it, we can also go for conducting Youth Olympic Games in 2029-2030. There are multiple other bidders also apart from India, like Mexico is one such bidder, Turkey is one such bidder. I don't know presently, or nobody knows presently, that what will happen. But as aspirants, it becomes very important to understand that what is the behind the scenes procedures for selecting cities for Olympic Games. Now earlier there was a procedure where the International Olympic Committee used to receive bids from the respective Olympic associations of every country. Like in India, we have the Indian Olympic Association IOA, which oversees the Olympic athletes over here in India, which takes the athletes to the Olympics. So every country has this respective Olympic association. The IOC is the international body, International Olympic Committee, which receives recommendations from respective authorities, Olympic authorities in every country. and then this IOC scrutinizes what is the logistics over there, what is the safety of athletes over there, how is the infrastructure developed over there, where the games are going to be held over there. All these things are considered, and then a city is chosen by IOC. This was the older method. 7 years advance choosing of cities was the mandate by IOC, that we'll choose the cities, select the cities 7 years in advance, so that that particular city gets ample time. But in 2013-14 there was a new chief of IOC, and that chief brought in the new norm. New norm comprised of, one of the major elements was how do we select the cities, or how we select the venues for Olympics. The new norms actually had an ongoing conference and a targeted conference in picture. Ongoing conference where we will keep on deliberating, discussing what can be done, what cannot be done, the bids will be received from the respective Olympic committees and all. And once the bids, they start getting concrete, they will move to the targeted stage. There it will be finally decided with the approval of IOC. And sustainability will also be taken into account, means those venues and all should not be environmentally harmful. Debt sustainability, because many cities or many countries, they wanted Olympics to be hosted in their countries to gain popularity, because tourism and all, it all increases during that period. But they end up in huge debts because of construction of those infrastructure and all. So this new norm, this new method of selecting cities and all, want to keep these kind of checks also on the hosts, that you don't go into debt traps, or you don't take huge debts, you utilize your older infrastructure, you revamp that. Like these, things are being done right now, which is obviously good, more environment friendly, more sustainable, more I would say accommodative also. So let us look into the details of this particular topic. Now the Prime Minister Narendra Modi publicly declared India's intentions to host the Olympic Games preferably in 2036. And International Olympic Committee, this proposal was given to the opening ceremony of 141st International Olympic Committee session in Mumbai on October 14. This happened. Also mentioned India's ambition to host the Youth Olympics in 2029, although the year maybe to 2030 also, where these Youth Olympics happen. Now only 3 Asian countries till now have hosted Olympics. China, it was there. Then Japan and South Korea. Japan has hosted twice, 2020 and 1964. If India does manage to outbid the competition, it will be the first big ticket multi-discipline sporting event in the country after the Commonwealth Games of 2010, and that was also controversy ridden. There was this Commonwealth Games scam, CWG scam, which we know. How was the host country selected? Now earlier the host country was selected like the respective national Olympic committees. Like for in India, the respective Olympic committee is IOA, Indian Olympic Association. It submits a letter of interest to IOC. IOC is basically the international body which oversees conduction of Olympic Games, and a multi-year, multi-step evaluation process then started by IOC after receiving these letter of interests. The bidding cities would complete a series of questionnaires evaluated by IOC. Second step of the process would involve scrutiny from IOC Evaluation Commission. This IOC Evaluation Commission will come to those cities and see whether adequate infrastructure is there for hosting games or not, for hosting the athletes or not, for ensuring safety of the athletes or not, travelling of the athletes or not. Everything will be, undertaken. Then, decision was taken 7 years in advance as per the Olympic Charter. It was declared 7 years in advance. It often led to excessive spending among the bidders to secure rights, often ending in huge debts, corruption and scandals. So this is something which happened in case of Commonwealth Games. That is not Olympics, but yes, Commonwealth Games. This happened in our country. So This happened in case of other countries also which were hosting Olympic Games. Now the new norm was into picture when the new IOC president in 2013 was elected, named as Thomas Bach. What he said was, after getting elected, he said that Olympic Agenda 2020 was rolled out by him. It is a roadmap for the future of Olympic movement, and it was approved by the 2014 IOC sessions. One part of this Agenda 2020 dealt with a new process for host city selection. It was named as the new norm, and this was adopted during 2019 IOC session in Lausanne. The new process placed emphasis on three main aspects. First was flexibility, second was sustainability, and third was cost effectiveness. So we will see all of these, flexibility, sustainability and cost effectiveness in selecting the new or the host city for hosting this event, mega event. The motto was, the games adapt to the region, and the region does not adapt to the games because countries, they did a lot of investments, took a lot of debt so that they could upgrade their levels and meet the demands of, I would say, IOC. It was simply that games will go in that region, they will adapt to that region, whatever is there. Obviously minimal should be there, okay? Those standards should be met, but the countries or the regions should not adapt to the games. Now, how has the process become flexible? So we have to study three, I would say, aspects of the new norm. First is flexibility, second is sustainability, and third is cost effectiveness. The first aspect, how it has become flexible. With respect to flexibility, 7-year rule was done away with. Earlier, cities were chosen 7 years in advance, khatam, it was over, and there has been greater flexibility in deciding the hosts. The IOC has said that the 2036 edition could be decided even as late as after 2030. Then eligibility is now a two-stage process. Selection is now a two-stage process. One is a continuous dialogue and one is a targeted dialogue. So continuous dialogue keep on happening. Now once the bids start getting concrete, then the bids will move to a targeted dialogue where final approval will be given by IOC. The continuous dialogue, what will happen in this continuous dialogue? It is basically continuous, first of all, as the name suggests, is non-committal stage, not specific to any particular edition. It is basically a discussion between the IOC's Future Host Commission, FHC. FHC comprises of various athletes, various, I would say, Olympic organizations or committees of various countries and interested parties about the host's vision. This is followed by putting together a master plan and working out logistical details. Means, let's suppose India wants to bid for Olympics. So India's bid first will be here in this continuous dialogue. Continuous dialogue, there is this FHC, the Future Host Commission, which is going to discuss India's bid, which is going to see what kind of infrastructure does India have, what kind of, I would say, economy is India having, will India be able to sustain these kind of expenditure on Olympics or not. So this is an ongoing I would say thing, and every country, every bidder who is bidding, they can have their own template of conducting the games. Template means whether in India the games will be there in multiple cities or in one city only, what date, what duration, all these can be chosen by every respective country. Once there is seriousness in a bid to progress to the next level, it will enter the targeted dialogue. So once things start getting concrete over here, then that bid will go to the next stage, that is the targeted dialogue. Now earlier what happened, if your bid was rejected, you are sidelined. But here in this case what will happen, if your bid is not selected for the targeted stage, still your bid will be under consideration. Let's suppose India's bid for 2036 does not get selected. So maybe 2040 or 2044, 2048, it will be in continuous dialogue. That is the beauty of continuous dialogue. So this is basically there. Then the targeted dialogue. In this targeted dialogue phase, actually this is kind of going to be the final phase. Bids become more determined. While there is again no time frame for the targeted dialogue, but yes, it is I kind of anticipated to get decisions taken within 12 months. It explores the proposals to host a specific edition of Olympic Games, and FHC submits the bid to IOC's executive board. Ki bhai, these are the countries which we have selected finally, and you give your approval now. Now, the preferred hosts, basically they go to IOC, and IOC gives the final approval. This executive board gives the final approval, which has the power to either recommend a single host or shortlist more than one for elections of IOC members. Means the IOC members can select which country will host, or multiple countries if they have to host, they can do that also. Multiple cities in a country where the games will be hosted. The final decision is taken by IOC. So this is there in this targeted dialogue. Again, IOC's executive board is there. FHC will bring the bids from here, the concrete bids from here to this place, targeted dialogue, and from here in the targeted dialogue these bids will be submitted to the IOC's executive board by FHC, that is Future Host Commissions, and IOC executive board will give the final decision ki bhai we'll do it or not, or where we'll do it. Now, how does sustainability and cost effectiveness come into picture? This is the second and third aspect which is there in this new regime, new norm, In order to ensure the long-term sustainability of infrastructure and avoid any public backlash, hosts are encouraged as far as possible to use existing and temporary venues. And it has been witnessed that as per IOC's claims, the focus on using existing and temporary venues has led to an 80% decrease in bid budgets. Means the expenditure has come down, means countries will not be taking loans that much. So this has been witnessed. Any new venues built must be in line with existing developmental plans and have a long-term justification also. All editions of the Summer, Winter, Youth Olympics from 2030 onwards must also adhere to IOC's climate positive commitment. Means IOC has done this commitment to United Nations that hosting Olympics will not be carbon will be less emitting events. So these commitments also have to be taken into account. So it will have a positive impact on the climate, means less carbon will be emitted, more will be sucked in. That is carbon negative, climate positive. So it will have a overall climate positive commitment. That is why it is becoming sustainable. Due to this 80% decrease in bid budgets, it is becoming cost effective. The IOC also provides technical support and expertise to preferred hosts on marketing, venue development and sustainability to reduce the costs. So this support is also given by IOC to the hosts, and that is why it is becoming sustainable and cost effective. That is the second and third aspect of this. Who are other bidders other than India? Mexico already hosted in 1968, and Mexico wants to spread across 4 cities of Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey and Tijuana. Indonesia at the new capital of Nusantara, which is still under construction. Turkey in Istanbul, Poland in Warsaw, they want to host. And India is yet to decide the cities where games will be organized. Other potential bidders, they include Egypt, Seoul, China, Qatar, Hungary, Italy, Denmark, Canada and Germany. These are confirmed bidders for 2036 Olympics, but these can be other bidders also. Now, if Egypt becomes or gets selected, it would be the first African country to host Olympic Games. In Asia, 3 countries have already done it, that is China, Japan and South Korea. India-Qatar relations. These relations are coming into picture because of the arrest of 8 ex-naval officers. Largely speaking, the relations between India and Qatar are friendly. Largely speaking, India imports a lot of, I would say, energy imports from Qatar. And a lot of Indians are staying in Qatar. Around 8 lakh Indians are staying and working there in Qatar presently. The ties started to strengthen with the visit of our ex-Prime Minister Mr. Manmohan Singh to Qatar in I think 2008. After that, when the new government was formed over here in 2014, in 2015, the Qatari Emir, he visited India, which was responded or reciprocated by the visit of Indian Prime Minister the very next year in 2016 to Qatar. After that, multiple times our Minister of External Affairs, the current one, has visited Qatar. This simply signifies the growing importance of Qatar for India and vice versa. But this particular episode has popped up as a challenge between the relations of these both countries. So let us look into the details of our relations with Qatar. India and Qatar have historically shared a friendly relationship. A turning point in the ties has been Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's November 2008 visit to Qatar, making him the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Qatar. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi came to power, that is 2014, Qatar Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani visited India in 2015. This was followed by a visit to the Muslim nation by the Indian PM the very next year, that is 2016. And after that, multiple visits by Mr. S. Jaishankar, our Minister of External Affairs, to the nation, which signifies, thriving relations between both these countries. Now, elements of partnership, what are there? First is defense, cooperation and trade. They are the key, I would say, elements of trade or elements of India-Qatar partnership. India was the world's 4th largest importer of liquefied natural gas LNG in 2021. And you would be surprised that 40% of our LNG is coming from Qatar alone. So obviously Qatar is the highest or the largest or biggest supplier of LNG to India, liquefied natural gas. Indians constitute the largest expatriated community in Qatar. Means if you see Qatar's population and you specifically see those people who have migrated from other countries to Qatar, you will see Indians as the highest in number. Around 8 lakh Indians live and work in Qatar. The challenges in relationship between India and Qatar. The challenges are, the present episode definitely can be considered as a challenge, but let's see how things unfold. Actually, there is an agreement also between India and Qatar that after the judicial proceedings are over on those Indian citizens, because Qatar does not give citizenship to people over there. Those people are Indian citizens holding Indian passports. So after the judicial proceedings are over in Qatar, sentence is given, then it can be a possibility that those people, they serve their sentence in India. Actually, the agreement says that sentence should be such that the family members of those prisoners should be allowed to visit them. We cannot too much interfere in their judicial matters, but yes, Ministry of External Affairs is in talks with the Qatari government. But let's see how things unfold. And one more thing we need to know is that a lower court has given this sentence. Appeal will be filed in a higher court also. So this is there. Another challenge which popped up was, a recent hiccup which happened when the BJP spokesperson Nupur Sharma, she remarked against the Prophet Muhammad on a TV show last year. Qatar was the first country to raise objections and demand a public apology from India, and India was quick in responding to that, and India took whatever actions it was necessary, realizing that this is a mistake. So that was one such challenge. Another challenge has now popped up. This is the importance of relations with protecting the Arctic. Arctic is basically the North Pole, ice caps over there. Unfortunately, those ice caps are melting at the fastest rate in human history, courtesy global warming or climate change. Another, I would say, issue over there is the Arctic Council. Arctic Council comprising of 8 countries, but it is presently dysfunctional or suspended. Why? Because of the Russia-Ukraine war since 2022. USA is also part of Arctic Council, on the other hand Russia is also part of it. Arctic Council, the decisions were taken with consensus and largely the decisions were favoring the sustainability and preservation of the Arctic region. Those kind of decisions were taken because there is no country in Arctic, there is no, I would say, government in Arctic. So all these countries which are neighboring Arctic, these 8 countries, they formed this Arctic Council and they were taking decisions for the welfare of Arctic region. Now in this entire scenario, 2 authors have written an editorial in the Indian Express in which they are highlighting India's role in preserving the Arctic. India per se is not part of Arctic Council. India is an observer member in Arctic Council, but the authors, they highlight that India's role can be very, very important because India has achieved the impossible in G20, that is achieving the consensus, and that too in a time when the entire world is divided. Entire world means on one side we have Russia, China like countries, on the other side we have the West, and India, middle of it, was able to achieve a consensus. So India's intervention for preservation of Arctic should also be there to achieve a common ground, to bring these conflicting parties on a common ground so that Arctic does not suffer. Actually, India is also announced that in November, December this year, they will release an update document on G20. That will be a virtual summit or virtual meeting on G20 on assessing the progress, whatever was discussed during the summit in September. So these authors, by the way of this editorial, they are appealing to the Indian government that you also pick up the cause of Arctic over there. So let us get to the details of this and let us understand what this entire issue is. In an emerging multipolar world, India has surprised many observers by extracting a rare thing as a host of G20 summit. And what was this rare thing? That rare thing was consensus, means agreement of all. Seen increasingly as a deterrent against Chinese expansionism, India has shown it can balance the competing interest of the global north and global south. This is essential to protecting our global climate, including critically important ecosystems such as the Arctic. Now, what stakes does India have in the Arctic? India, along with 12 other countries, is observer to the Arctic Council. So are 13 intergovernmental and interparliamentary organizations like UN Environment Programme, the UN Development Programme and 12 other non-government organizations. So per se, India, along with many other countries and I would say entities, governmental entities or intergovernmental entities, is an observer member. Observer member means it can only participate in the meetings, proceedings, it can only observe without the right to vote. Only the, I would say, permanent members have the right to vote. And who are the permanent members? There are actually 8 permanent members: Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, Sweden and the United States. Besides them, 6 organizations representing the indigenous people of the Arctic region have been granted the status of permanent participants. So this Arctic Council calls itself the leading intergovernmental forum for discussing and addressing issues concerning the Arctic region, including scientific research and peaceful and sustainable use of the resources in the region, means the Arctic region. The council has been suspended presently due to the Russia-Ukraine war, and which actually all these works are in vacuum, means nobody is doing it right now, and people are fearing that in this already changing climate, Arctic, ice is melting at the fastest rate and the Arctic Council is also not there presently. What will happen? That is why the authors, they are turning up towards India ki bhai, you have done something impossible in G20, you do it for Arctic also. This is a very big, I would say, achievement for India or task given to India. Now this is basically the Arctic Circle which you are seeing here and the Arctic Council members, USA you can see, Canada over here, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland and Russia, the largest expanses of Russia. This is the Arctic region. This is basically you are seeing the earth. This is the earth, you are seeing it from top. These are the members of Arctic Council. Features of Arctic Council: all decisions are taken by consensus between the 8 members and in consultation with the permanent participants. These permanent participants, the 6 organizations representing indigenous people of Arctic region have been granted the status of permanent participants. So, all decisions are taken by consensus between the 8 members. Consensus should be there between the 8 members, but consultation should be done with permanent members or permanent participants also. Then the council is not a treaty based international legal entity like UN bodies or trade, military or regional grouping like WTO, NATO or ASEAN. It is only an intergovernmental forum to promote cooperation in regulating the activities of Arctic region. It is much more informal grouping, not a formal grouping. We should understand this also. So, this is what Arctic Circle is. Now, what can be India's role in the Arctic? See, gist of it I have given you, but yes, India's ability to traverse historical divides like historical divide between USA and Russia continuing from the Cold War region, and in this, when this divide is at the heightened position, India achieved the consensus and developed aligned positions among the global north and south is evidenced at the G20 summit. So, means India has a potential to forge a united approach to safeguarding crucial global ecosystems, especially the Arctic, because this conflict of Russia and USA has transcended to the Arctic region also. India has a further opportunity to exercise this bridge building capacity. Proposed virtual G20 summit in November, which India has proposed it, where it can raise the Arctic as part of constructive conversation on climate governance. This capacity to generate unanimity will be needed to reform Arctic governance, which is currently, I would say, unfocused or non-focused. So, this role is something which India can play, but let's see what happens, and India should be doing it cautiously obviously, and to save that Arctic is one of the priorities and is in the interest of entire mankind. So, considering this, India should or India can do this, which will further elevate India's, I would say, geopolitical position. And this is it from today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow now with some more informative news pieces. Till then, you guys know very well what to do. Keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and most importantly, keep revising. Namaste. Jai Hind.